Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of the Live Your Jam podcast. Today, we have an interview with someone who shifted from corporate life, 30 years in high tech, to a life of service. Currently, he and his amazing wife, Peggy, have 2 significant projects, one where they house homeless veterans in Central Oregon, and the other where they are building a memory care home for seniors. Both are significant undertakings, and we're going to learn all the details of how he made this shift and put his values and vision to work. And yes, it couldn't get any better. As an added bonus, he's going to dispel the false dichotomy that service and success must be mutually exclusive. I have the great honor today of having my friend of 20 years, Dave Budnick. Welcome. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dave, but first I want to welcome him to the podcast. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks so much, Ellen. I am so happy to be here. I've really enjoyed listening to the episodes that you've already released, and I've learned so much from you guests, and I hope I can share a little bit that people find interesting during this session.
I know that you will, Dave. Your story is so exciting, so thank you for being here. It's so exciting. I'm so glad to tell it. As a matter of fact, when I first started the podcast, I was like, I got to get Dave on. Dave's story is so compelling. I remember when you started telling me about your embarking on this, you and Peggy, and I remember getting chills and thinking this is exactly the stuff that Jam is made of. So everyone, I've had the honor of watching this transition take place because as I mentioned, I've known Dave for 20 years. And we began working together in high tech in the Silicon Valley in early 2000. And Dave was one of my mentors, and we were colleagues. You were so patient with me, Dave, explaining the business and technology to me. And I remember many whiteboard sessions led by Dave where he explained the technology stack to me and how SAP instances work. This was back in the client server days. And then fortunately for me, Dave and I were able to connect. Dave has a really good sense of humor, and I appreciate that as well. And so we were able to connect, and then I met his wonderful wife, Peggy, and then as life goes, Peggy and Dave were the reason that we moved from Berkeley to Pleasanton, California. We were looking for a place, remember, Dave, to raise our kids? And
Yeah.
you had lived in the city, and you had moved to the burbs, and you're like, Ellen, it's awesome. And I'm like, if Dave thinks it's awesome, I'll think it's awesome. So you told us to look at Pleasanton, you drove us around, and we really did. And we ended up moving there, and I got to even see you more, right?
That was fun times. I think you always go through a transition when you love the place you live, like I did when I was single and I lived in the middle of San Francisco, and I thought it was a wonderful city. It was a great place to be. And then, life changes. I met Peggy. We decided to get married, and she had 2 kids. So we moved out to her place in the burbs, and it was wonderful too. It's just different. And I absolutely fell in love with the East Bay. It was just a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, we were already east, and we moved further east and really enjoyed Pleasanton, and then got to see you. And Peggy is a fellow Leo, so I think I can relate to her on that level as well. But Dave, you're such a smart, kind person, and you're one of the things I always think about with you is just how generous you are with your time and your knowledge. And I hearken back to our days at Blue Star when the VP of sales, Rusty, called Dave, referred to you as a librarian, because if you always wanted to know something, there was a really good chance that you had already researched it and could give a very well-reasoned answer. I mean, you have this unbelievable skill of knowing a lot and not being a know-it-all. So I don't know how you do it. I think it's your generosity, and also to your explanation of things is always so balanced without, a lot of leading. And that kind of concurs because I remember at the time, Malcolm Gladwell had just published The Tipping Point. It was right around that time, the early 2000s. And he had talked about there's 3 types of people. He identified them in that book that were crucial for spreading ideas. And they were the connectors, the mavens, and the salesmen. And I remember coming to work like, Dave, you're such a maven. And mavens were, he defined them as data banks and who are obsessed with information and have detailed knowledge of specific topics. And they're the ones that people would turn to for advice for what's going on. And their primary motivation was to share knowledge. And I was like, I think Malcolm Gladwell knows you intimately, Dave. Because I was the sort like, Dave, I need to buy a new TV. And then you would try to explain like all the different types out there because they were changing then, right? So rapidly. And I'm like, no, I just want the SKU. I don't really, just tell me which one to buy, Dave.
Cut to the bottom line.
And you did. So today's topic is about how you have gone from a life of corporate to a life of service. And I want for you to share with everybody just your background because it is extensive. You were in tech for 30 years. So if you don't mind, can you just share with everyone your background and then we'll kind of get into that shift from corporate to a life of service?
Well, it's kind of funny, Ellen. I talk a lot about my years in high tech. I actually started my career as an actuary out of college. I was a math major, and I spent 10 years in actuarial science and learning computers there. And that sort of was my springboard into high tech. And I joined this wonderful small company that was kind of the epitome of what growing businesses were back in the 80s, and it was felt like a family. Everyone was growing and learning together, and it was a wonderful place to be. And then I moved into high tech and I found this whole new world and worked with a dozen different companies, probably all the big names that most people are familiar with, and some smaller names. And it's been an awesome career. I learned so much. I traveled the world. I met some great people. I learned how to hire people and develop people and train people. And I learned all the corporate lingo and all the things that companies focus on. And during that journey, as you said, I'm kind of curious about a lot of things. Peggy and I, once we got married, we started looking for long-term other things that we could do. And we stumbled upon real estate investing. So I started investing in real estate, and that became a passion for me in a way that was totally different from what I was doing in the corporate world. And that kind of dragged that along. And the combination of what I learned in corporate and what I learned in real estate investing has kind of led us to where we are now, which is what we'll be talking about shortly, I
Yeah,
think.
I remember that when you started off on the real estate journey and really dug into kind of how to invest there, and you had learned quite a bit. So actually, that curiosity and what you and Peggy did there in terms of devoting your time and energy and learning to real estate really has played a key role in where you are today. And I just use that as an example of when something interests people and the idea of live your jam to follow those threads because you never know what's going to come of it. So the real estate portion is critical actually to where you are now. So as you mentioned, you're pretty modest and you're talking about your 30 years in high tech and you're leading sales and marketing and technical teams and as you said, regional, national, and all over the world. And but at some point, and we're very successful in that. And I but at some point there was a call to change. There was a moment or maybe a series of moments when you realize I really don't want to stay here anymore, or I want to shift to something else. Sometimes it's not about that the thing we're in is wrong. It's that the call to the new is stronger. So what shifted inside of you?
That's a great question. As I said, I really did love what I was doing in high tech, and I traveled the world and I met so many fantastic people, and I loved the teams that I was working with. But at a certain point, it grinds you down. This constant cycle of organization and reorganization. You get a leader who comes in with a new vision, and everything is rah rah and go go, and you have to hire a team around this new vision to execute it. And then over the next year or 18 months, that all kind of peters out. And then a new leader comes in, and then they're like, oh, forget all that stuff. We're going to go in a new direction. And by the way, you need to reorganize and you need to let go all those people you hired, and maybe even we're going to let you go. And it just goes in cycles. And that's kind of the nature of high tech, because you are dealing with technology that changes so fast, and things that are happening. 18 months is a long time in with some of these technologies. So it just gets exhausting. And what I found is the thing I loved about high tech and loved about my career was the relationships I built and the ability to be able to solve interesting problems for my customers and to make promises and keep them and to take care of my teams. But despite all the focus on vision and mission statements and in the corporate world, at the end of the day, I think corporations are truly soulless. And if you have a solid team, at best, your team may have a soul, or maybe the nuclear team that's around you has a soul and an identity, and you guys fight for the same things and celebrate the same wins. But that's not the way corporate America lives anymore. So
Yeah.
it was just exhausting to me, Ellen, and I felt like I needed to be in a place where I could make commitments to my team, to my customers, to my stakeholders, and keep them.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to do that anymore. And during that time, I thought back often to when you and I first met, and we worked together. And then I think it was like 2005 when you kind of told me, "Hey, Dave, I've been thinking about this thing, and I'm going to leave this job, and I'm going to go off and dive deep into organizational development and create something new." And I never really told you this, but I was sort of astounded at that point in time. I'm like, "Oh my God, here's this woman who's so talented and so capable and is doing such wonderful things in our organization, and she's just going to walk away from all this and do something new." And I didn't really think it through at the time, but it really stuck in my craw for a long time. And as I saw you fulfill your ideas and start your new journey, I was so happy for you and so proud of you, and so I think moved that it stayed with me over the years. And whenever I thought about making a change, you were probably the first person I thought about, even if I didn't reach out and say so. It was always in my head that, yeah, Ellen made this change and look how great she's doing. And that sort of allowed me to make some of the changes that I did.
Yeah, that's so nice of you, Dave. When we were preparing for this, I didn't see that, and then I saw this in the notes, and I was so touched by it. So I think I do remember that because we were working close together, and then the company had a buyout, and there was a lot of opportunity there for me and for all of us, right? And I yeah, so yeah, and you've always been so supportive. So yeah, that's great. I'm glad you've made many impressions on me, so I'm thrilled. So let's talk to you about a life of service. When I think of you and Peggy, I really think of you two this way. And you did charitable work in Pleasanton, both of you, and have always thought like very big picture, very about others. So what caused you to make the decision to live a life of service? And why is that important to you?
Peggy and I made a decision to leave the Bay Area in 2020, and we moved to Bend, Oregon. And at that time, you remember, it was the middle of the pandemic, and we were kind of in lockdown for a year. When we finally came out, Peg had retired when we moved here, and I was still working from home. And she just needed to get out of the house. So she started volunteering at 3 different charities 3 days a week. And she was working hard at these wonderful organizations and contributing and working at the food bank and doing some great stuff. And she dragged me down there a couple times a month and spend 4 or 5 hours helping. And as you do, you start writing checks to these organizations. So we're giving our time and we're giving our money, but they were all fairly large organizations. And we felt like, if we went away, if we moved to another community or something changed in our world and we were no longer there helping, would they even know that we were gone? And would it make a difference in their world not to have us there? And that kind of was something that we talked about a lot. And we decided that we just needed to find a way to make a more personal difference in people's lives in a way that was meaningful and measurable. And through our real estate work, we had come across a couple based in Seattle that were building clean and sober homes as a result of their daughter having been an addict when she was in her late teens and living that lifestyle. And they were showing other people how to create a charity and build a clean and sober living home. And we kind of got fascinated by that idea as a way to marry the passion that we had for real estate with our desire to do something good in our community. And that's sort of where it started. And as we dove deep there, we looked at some of the different types of organizations that needed help. There are people coming out of incarceration. There's the veterans community. There's kids that are getting pushed out of foster home. There's people who are escaping domestic violence. I mean, so many groups in our community needed assistance. And we chose the veterans because both Peg's dad and my dad were active duty World War II. We had a connection there. And it's also something that we felt would be more accepted in the neighborhoods. There's a lot
Yeah.
still of not in my
Mhm.
backyard with some of these types of organizations.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of how we got to creating this charity and starting our path of giving back to the community. And we joined the Homeless Leadership Coalition in the town that we opened the house in, and we joined the local service providers organization. And we met all these wonderful organizations that are boots on the ground, out helping people in need all over the community, and identified a need that wasn't being solved and found a way to fill it. And
And
in
that's
the, in
when you
the
created the HomeBridge
yeah,
Foundation,
that's the
right?
HomeBridge Foundation.
And that is where you own a property and you now dedicate that to
Exactly.
house veterans who were homeless.
Right. So what we did is we repurposed one of the rental properties that we had and turned it into this charity. And it's a 5 bedroom, 2 bath house, and we can house 5 individuals in the house at any time. It's fully furnished and it's got all the things that they need, internet and computers and a wonderful kitchen and beautiful outdoor area. And it's just a nice place for these guys to call home. In the two
Yeah.
years that we've been open, we've had 13 different veterans come through the house, ranging in age from 23 to 85. And
Wow.
it's been a fantastic experience getting to know these guys, helping them along their journey, and giving them a safe home, really, that they can call theirs.
And I think you and I have talked about this, and you've educated me on kind of how this works. Is like people can stay for as short or as long as they want, and I think that's addressing one of the gaps. And we have some safety nets in the U.S., and you could argue that some of it's an enigma, right? And then some of them are short-term solutions that don't really people get passed along. But one of the things that you shared with me that I was really touched by and wanted to acknowledge is if a vet wants to stay in your home, they can stay for the rest of their lives.
What we quickly learned as we dove into this is there are a lot of great programs that focus on taking the people, I call it, out of the bushes,
Yeah.
basically, and getting them on their feet, getting them in touch with their benefits, getting them medical care, helping them, giving them a caseworker, helping them move forward in life and get them stabilized. And there are wonderful organizations that do that, but all those organizations are fairly time bound. They can only be there for 6 months or 9 months or a year or whatever, because they have so many people that they have to address. So they want these folks to move on. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of good places for them to move on to. And so that's what we created, was a place that these guys could come out of those programs, move into our house and be here a month, 3 months, a year, as long as they want. And
Yeah.
I think that's worked out well for us.
Yeah, it's so amazing, and it's so incredible. And when you told me about this, I think I'd come back, and you're telling me, I'd come back from Europe, and you're kind of really updating me on what had gone on. I was just blown away, and then it even furthered, and that is you and Peggy then started to think more. You started to think about what else we can do, and that's when the idea of Majestic Ridge Senior Care came in. This is the 11,000 square foot memory home that you are building, 16 bed, 17 baths. I mean, so you're like, you're going all in now. And so we're going to talk about that more, but why memory care and what caused you both to take this big leap?
Life happens to all of us, and when it takes us in directions that we never think about. But when Peg and I first got married, she was doing a lot with animals. She was on the board
Yeah.
of the Humane Society in Pleasanton and loved giving to animals. But something that we also talked about was the marginalization of seniors in our society. And it's been kind of a common thing that we have an itch that we've been scratching for a long time. We both
Mhm.
had elderly parents. We were lucky enough to have all four of our parents with us into their late 90s. Peg's stepmom and dad have passed in the last 2 years. My folks are still with us. My dad just turned 98 Monday, and my mom's 91.
Birthday to Sam.
So yeah, mom had a
How old
stroke a
is
few
your mom?
years
I'm sorry,
ago.
didn't you say that?
She's 91,
91. Okay,
and
amazing.
she had a stroke a few years ago, and right after that came a diagnosis of dementia. We started thinking about what are our choices to take care of mom, and every family probably has these stories, but mom's mom was in a nursing home many years ago, and even though it was the best place in our community, it still came with all the problems of what nursing homes were in the 80s and 90s, very understaffed and not really well run and so forth. So we started researching our choices, knowing that we would have to move mom from the East Coast out here to be with us at some point. And I think we were in more than 30 facilities in our community, looking and talking to people and learning how they provided care for their residents. And we realized mom wouldn't be happy in any of these. And it was kind of a big pit in the bottom of your stomach. Like, how are we going to solve this problem? And just like when we met the couple in Seattle that was creating charitable organizations, we came across a group of people in Texas that were building a very different kind of assisted living and memory care facility. And this was through our real estate connections. And so we dug deep there and started learning more about it and realized, wow, we can leverage what we learned about creating a group home for our vets and create a much bigger group home for seniors at the end of their life journey that need great care and a great place to call home. That was kind of the genesis of that.
Yeah, no, it is interesting how one led to the other, and probably the success around the veterans home, or at least knowing you, seeing like we can do this could, and then also recognizing that your mom, the state, the what is available for our seniors. I mean, it's amazing how it all came together. I think what is also interesting about your story is you're not independently wealthy and you still need to make a living, and like most of us
Right.
do, right? And so we've always, and your story is so, it's just so how I know you. It's thinking about others, thinking big ideas, big challenges, and actually putting it to work. But we have been taught to see in our society that success and service are opposites. And if you can't care for others and still care for your family, that's really kind of what society tells us. But we know that that belief is outdated. And in reality, when your work is aligned with service, it often creates flow and more abundance, not less. So, I mean, you must have a belief that service and financial stability can coexist, right?
Absolutely.
So talk to us about that, because I think it's such a critical topic.
Yeah, for sure. And I know there's a lot of thinking around this in ways that people can create investment portfolios supporting wonderful social services and things like that. But I tend to gravitate more towards the things that I can touch and control and solve myself. And my belief is that if you're thoughtful, you can solve social problems and provide for your family at the same time wonderfully. And I think I have a few good examples that I talk about all the time. If you don't mind, I'll lead you through a
Please.
couple.
I'd love to have it illuminated. Yes, tell
Yeah,
us.
so the first one comes from my real estate career. I go to a lot of real estate meetups in my community. It's a great way to meet people. All kinds of people come to these events, some very seasoned and senior investors, and some people that are just excited about the possibility of maybe I can get into this and learn about it. And one of the things I talk about a lot at those events is the economics of creating shared housing for the right group of consumers to solve the scarcity of affordable housing in our
Hmm.
community. Most people say, oh, you can't buy real estate, rental real estate in our community. It's too expensive. It doesn't pencil out. Can't make a cash flow there. But if you turn a home into a shared home for 4 or 5 young people that kind of have just come out of college, don't mind living together as a group and a community, know that
Sure.
they're
Yeah.
mobile
We've
and they're
all
going to
done
be
it.
coming and going, and you give them a good, clean, safe place to live, you can actually earn a very good income from that
Yeah.
kind of thing and allow people to rent a room in a furnished home for much less than they could if they were out trying to find
Hmm.
their own place or rent
Hmm.
an apartment.
Hmm.
So it's a great example of a way that the economics work. And then we turned that model around and applied it to housing for the at-risk groups. So we were able to create this clean and sober group home for our veterans. And
Right.
the model works the same way. You can achieve average or even above average returns with a shared housing model. We just chose to take the above average part of that and leave it in the charitable organization. So
Yeah.
we don't take extra money out of that place. We try to keep as much as we can in the charity so that instead of spending our own money keeping the lights on, we can allow the charity to pay for itself. And then we can donate extra money for fun stuff like group dinners with the guys and building planting beds
Yeah.
and doing things that they can grow good food and stuff like that. So that's another example. And I think my third example really is just dealing with aging seniors and dementia
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
creating another type of housing that really offers investors a wonderful return, but provides an incredible lifestyle for people who really need that kind of support.
Yeah, very exciting, Dave. And I think it kind of gets into, again, your background in real estate, attending these things, being open-minded, and also seeing that it's not mutually exclusive, that service and financial stability can actually work really well together. So, and it's so exciting because both sides win, right? And
Absolutely
so
right.
and you can still live your values and hold your promises, because I know that was one of the things in corporate. I know I talked to you many times about how much you loved your teams and building them. And that's really what lit you up, and just how you couldn't follow through sometimes because you weren't in control of being able to hold your promise, because there would be another change in the organization or something. So I can really see how that plays into who you are, and also to hopefully inspiring to others, thinking, there's ways out there that you can still make a profit and help others, and to be open-minded about that. So it kind of gets me to the next question, and in terms of, I know that fulfillment is a part of this, but there's got to be hard days too, right? Because if you're building this facility, there's all the healthcare involved. I'm sure there's just, compliance. And I can't even, you're building something, and then there's all the regulations, and then all the things around dementia care and staffing it. And I'm sure you need an HRIS system, and, like all of these kind of things. So do you feel more fulfilled today, even on the hard days, than when you were climbing the corporate ladder?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no doubt. I mean, you mentioned that I'm the kind of person that likes to learn new things, and taking on a project like this with the senior care, most of the people that we've talked to over this journey kind of look at us and say, okay, real estate, but you have no healthcare background,
Uh-huh.
why are you doing this? And there's so much to learn. There's so much to
You're
learn.
like,
We've
why?
never
I'm a
done.
librarian, don't you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
I know now.
There's we've never built a ground up construction project before. So there's all the learning that comes with that. And of course, all the stuff in the healthcare space. And Oregon is very regulated in the senior care for many reasons. It's one of the first places, actually, I think it's the first state in the country that assisted living business was launched and started in its current iteration. So there's just a lot of bureaucracy that comes with this kind of a journey.
Right.
So sometimes it's really daunting
Yeah.
and overwhelming, but it is exciting to know that you're building something that is going to be better than the alternatives that are available out there in the market. And honestly, Ellen, I just want to mention a little thing that happened to me this weekend. I got an email early Sunday morning from a former coworker in high tech who's still in the high tech world, and he's at a new company. He's 4 or 5 years away from retirement, and it was just such a soul sucking message from this poor
Wow.
guy. And he's a great friend, and I love him. I shouldn't say poor guy. He's a wonderful guy, and he's got a great attitude. We talk a lot because he had a dad that was going through the senior living journey, and the same health issues that my mom was. But he was just sort of venting to me about all the things that are going on in his high tech world. And, I stop when I read things like that. And of course, you empathize with them and you communicate to them, but then you say, I am so happy that I don't have to be in
Change
that
my
environment
reality.
anymore. And that's no longer my world. And
Yeah.
I know I have my own stresses to worry about, but I am building something that's going to be different. And I'm so excited about that. And that keeps the lights on for me every night when I'm sitting at my desk late,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. No, I love that story. I mean, it's a good reminder of your just affirmation that it was time for you to go, right? And that what you're building now really does light you up. And so I think that's really important. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, there's got to be hard days, and there's got to be problems. I mean, that seems sometimes like, how are we going to get around this one? But you're able to do it in integrity, and also too, you've gotten so far. I'm sure it's fulfilling. So thanks for that. Okay, so live your jam, big on inner compass. I talk about living from the inside out all the time and listening to those inner nudges. And there's lots of metaphors for intuition, inner compass, nudge, soul whisper. But how has listening to your own inner compass changed the way that you live and lead now?
I think I mentioned when I started my career was in the early 80s, and my first company even had a pension, and it was the kind of place that they would take care of you if you took care of them, and it was wonderful. But then in
Yeah,
the 90s, all that changed, and
right.
all the corporate stuff that we've discussed already has just kind of changed the landscape. So what I took away from that journey was that as leaders, and Peg and I as leaders of the new organization we're building, we need to establish a clear direction that's rooted in our values. I mean, we're starting this business for very personal reasons, and our short way of describing it, what we're doing is elevating lives with compassion. And if we
Wow.
start with that as a value statement, and we hire people for those values, and we attract residents for that reason, and we build an infrastructure with our service providers and partners that wrap around the residents with that in mind, then there's so much power in that consistency of message. Our employees will always know the right thing to do for the residents. We won't have to be there to tell them what to do. They'll understand. I mean, we'll obviously elucidate that much further in our training with our team, but it all comes back to setting the right vision as a leader and living that vision and showing by example how it all can happen.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful, Dave. I mean, elevating lives with compassion. I often talk about that inner wisdom isn't it doesn't take form. It's not that it starts out as like I want to go out and have a, 17 bed memory care unit. It's like it comes from within. That is the outcome of that, right? And then and I talk about the same thing. Like I help people attune to their own souls. And so, however that takes shape, whether it's a podcast or writing or even a quick conversation with someone I care about, I'm demonstrating that. And so, I think that is a really great example of kind of that inner compass. The inner compass is that you're compassionately changing lives, making them better, and that shapes everything. So it is very values based, and I find it just so inspiring. And so
Well,
you and
thanks.
Peggy.
Yeah,
It
we
really
do
is.
too, believe me. We come back to it over and over again, and I think
Yeah,
it's really what is our motivation right now.
nice. So in the Live Your Jam world, we believe our gifts, values, and joy are meant to be lived and expressed in the world, not just known. And that's what I find is that once we can identify these things, there's almost an automatic pull to take them out into the world. So where in this project do you feel most in your jam, if you will?
Well, a couple of ways, I think. I think we've learned a lot about what dementia does to the mind as you age. And one of the ways to push back against that, to stay sharp as you age, is to learn new things.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, every day in my world is an exciting journey of discovery. I am learning stuff every day, things I didn't even think about 2 weeks ago. So that definitely makes me feel in my jam. And that's from the librarian side of me, if I'm
It
going to
is. It's
borrow your
amazing.
term. But the other side of me, I think what makes it special is that we're building something that will make a difference in the lives of our residents and their families
Mhm.
and also of our employees. And
Yeah.
that extends also to the HomeBridge Foundation with our veterans. When we sit around the table and have pizza dinner with those guys and we see how well adapted they are to the group living environment and what a difference we've made in five gentlemen's lives, it's so rewarding. And it is
Yeah.
just fills your cup up. I really feel in my jam in those moments.
Nice. Nice, Dave. So, final question here, because I think it's a nice way to end, is that about the legacy that you want to create. Because to me, when you were talking about that, talking about sharing your values and gifts and really making a difference in people's lives, it got me to thinking about legacy and your what kind of legacy do you hope this creates, not just for you, but for how we treat people really in the most vulnerable chapter in our lives. You're helping veterans who have given so much to this country have a place to call home, and then also helping our seniors, again, another marginalized group. And so what kind of legacy do you hope that this creates?
Yeah, normally I think of legacy as my personal legacy to my family, and that's I don't think what we're talking about here. Both with our veterans home and with our senior care environment, we have designed homes that are truly there for the comfort and well-being of our residents, as well as a warm and welcoming place for the employees to pursue the passions that they have as caregivers. And
Mhm.
I think you need both of those sides of the equation in order for our ideas to succeed. And that's really what we're trying to create, is an environment that will live on long after us, that offers safe and I think a thriving place for people to live out their lives.
It's lovely, Dave, really lovely, and I do think that this will be also a legacy to your family, right, in terms of how they see you and the mark that you and Peg are gonna make on helping people in the most vulnerable chapter of their life, and I've seen renditions of the facility, and I mean, it's gorgeous, there's this huge salon, vaulted ceilings, it's gonna be a very welcoming place, and I know that what you are building there is just gonna be a really beautiful place for people to be in and comfortable, so I'm excited when that's all done. And I know that you and I have discussed it, and we're going to put all your information in about HomeBridge Foundation and also the Veterans Charity in the description box. And I know you guys are always you asked, is there anything that we can ask people to do? I know you guys looking for helping hands or anything?
Well, certainly anyone who's local to our community in Central Oregon, we're always looking for some help with our landscaping projects or, building something in the backyard for the guys. Definitely, or any kind of small donation that people want to offer through our website. But it's just really about engagement for the most part.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've gotten to know the community quite well as a result of all this?
Oh yeah, we have joined the Chamber of Commerce, and as I said, we're part of the local service providers organization and the Homeless Leadership Coalition, and so getting to know all the people, the many people that work at all those various organizations, it's a great way to get to know your community
Yeah.
and
And it's
understand what's
amazing.
going
You guys
on.
have been there, what, 4 years?
5 years now, a little
Isn't
over
that
5 years. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, we'll put all the information in there, and I just wanna say that I'm so proud of you and Peggy, Dave. I mean, what you're taking
thanks,
on is
Ellen.
massive on so many levels, also too, just the funding to get it up and running and, you inspire me, and I appreciate your time here, and I know you're super busy, so I appreciate it all, and your friendship, of course, means the world to me.
Well, thanks, Ellen, and we're definitely proud of what you're building in the Live Your Jam community. So right
Thanks,
back at you.
Dave. Alright, everybody, thank you so much. You take care, and thanks for your time.